just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. So we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. Coach Nick Davies and I welcome you to another special edition of Truth Seekers Coach's Corner. What's the story you're telling yourself? Sometimes we find ourselves having lousy days, or days that were low energy, or days that we're not getting the results that we want. It is inherent upon us to reflect when we have those days and think about the story we're telling ourselves. Where are we playing the character in those stories? What are our attributes, and how much influence and control do we have over our stories into the future? On this episode of Truth Seekers, we talk about metabolic, emotional, and energetic flexibility, and we talk about the control and the power we have over creating what winning looks like. If we don't define what winning is, do we even have a chance? We hope you enjoy this special episode of Truth Seekers Coach's Corner with Coach Nick Davies and myself, Coach Josh Greco. All right, another episode, another edition, special edition of Truth Seekers. Coach Nick Davies, Coach Josh Greco. Coach, what's up over there? Are you well rested? Are you tired? Give me your energy levels today.
Well, I want to celebrate first of all my cool new bobblehead.
Wow.
Yeah, it says Super Coach Nick at the bottom. Yeah.
So tearing through and revealing the S on the chest. I love it.
Boom. Yeah, so that's good energy. It's always interesting though, because we record this at the end of the day, and we talked about this in the past, that we crank through the day. We crank it, right? And some days are cranking more than others, but we're doing it. We're in it. Like, we're building, we're serving, we're moving, we're shaking. And some days we get more rest than others. Some days we don't. But energy is a choice, and sometimes you have to make a harder choice than others. I guess it's just when focusing a lot on health and eating and primal keto eating and being a certified health coach from that angle, oftentimes what's talked about is metabolic flexibility. If you eat in the right way and your epigenome is functioning in a way that's serving you the best, then it allows you some flexibility, meaning, and it's a crude way of saying it, you can get away with more stuff. But so your metabolism is flexible to you because you've spent time training it to promote the best version of you through your gene upregulation. Same way for emotions. You have emotional flexibility. And I was reading a book yesterday, and it's like, this is the most ridiculous thing, but we call emotions feelings because we feel them in our body. It's like, I never actually made the connection between the words before. We talk about energy being like a choice, right? So you move your body, you get energy. So that's a feeling. So you move it around and you get energy by moving around. Like you fall asleep when you're still. If you're not still and not pretending to fall asleep, which is the most ridiculous thing, as you shared, then you've got energy and you won't fall asleep. So you've got to have that energetic connection. So emotions equals feelings, because we actually feel them in our body. They go, if you want emotional flexibility, you've got to know how it feels in your body. And then we have language attached to it, because it's a shortcut. To describe the actual emotional feeling in our body would be longer. It's scary. Or said differently, like, the muscles in my upper body, my lower body are tense. My heart is beating a little bit faster. I'm starting to feel hot. I can't seem to quite relax my face. might be the actual representation of the feeling. But to say I'm scared is a lot quicker.
Interesting. Yeah, there's so much wrapped up in that, right? So it's being able to express how the body feels, which is just the word itself, feels, is also a description of what's actually happening. But it's our experience of it, right? And then we attempt to communicate what's happening with it. And grand principle, energy is a choice, right? That's not something that's normally accepted in the everyday world or focused upon. Can you tell me what you mean more by that? Like, let's dive deeper into that, because I'm really curious about. Energy is a choice.
So to circle back on that first thought, so metabolic flexibility lead me thinking about emotional flexibility, knowing what the feelings are, so you can front run them rather than being overtaken by something. And then energetic flexibility is being able to move your body in such a way so you can access the energy that you need. So when is it that you feel the most tired? When you're not doing anything. When do you feel most alive? When you're moving about the most.
Is it not the other way around? How do we know that for sure?
Well, there are extremes, of course, but I would say that you can't fall asleep when you're moving around, for a start. And I know when I feel most alive is when I'm physically moving my body. So I feel like most energy, I have most access of my resources when I'm moving around. That's why most of the time I'm standing up coaching. More movement, like more accessing body, more moving around. I know, like I'd be open to any evidence to the contrary. That's how I believe it is.
Yeah, I guess what I meant by that was, how do we know we don't feel good first and then move around? Does that make sense? Like, so what you're saying is that when we move around, we feel good. Is it not the other way around?
No, because we do emotions. Like our body is doing an emotion. It's not. There's not. It's not. It can't be the other way around. You can't. You do it like you have to use your body in a certain way in order to feel something. Your body's always in a certain way. Even when it's sleeping, it's a certain way. Like it always existing. You're always doing something with your body.
Yeah.
So if you're doing like sleepy and drowsy mid-afternoon, it might look something like this. Yeah. I was actually sharing this yesterday with someone. You've ever been that point where you're at school, like coming perhaps from like afternoon lunch or something, like, oh, this feels good. I'm just going to sit here and listen. Like, I'm okay with the topic. I'm just going to sit here and listen. Before you know it, you're like nodding off because you're doing mid-afternoon lazy. Right? Let's say you call it what you want, but if you were at the front of that classroom standing up, would it feel different?
Yeah, I would think.
I think so. I believe that to be true. Like if you want to feel a certain way, you got to put your body in a certain position to feel that first. Now there's more to it than like there's the focus and then the language that rounds it off. But I don't think that in that example that you could be sitting down, lounging in that space and think that this is the most riveting thing in the world and being super engaging and having experience. I think it starts with what you do with your body. And then you feel a certain way. But it's easy to go, I feel great. I feel great. But it's because you realize that after you've done the thing with your body.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So just getting back to what you said about flexibility. So metabolic, emotional, energetic. So it's the ability, like maybe we can say that like to achieve that, we got to take care of whatever it is. So the metabolic might be like sleep, right? We got to make sure we get enough sleep so that we expand the capacity. Like maybe if we don't get sleep, our capacity goes to 80%. But even still, there's always a place that we can go to get that energy.
I think so. It just depends how deep you have got to dig. You know, it's like I had a conversation with a client this week. Actually, he said, you know, like I don't know what the actual numbers are, but I think it's accepted that we only actually use a very small percentage of our mind, our brain, our capacity, 10, 15% or something like that, even when pushed, and he was talking about, like, he's like, I rarely get anywhere that's really pushing me. And he's a very successful guy. He's talking about flying in a plane, and his instructor basically turned all the instruments off, and all he had was like an actual compass to go by. He's like, at that point, I was trying to figure out everything at once. And he said, I felt like I was 100%. I felt like I was maxed out. I think probably in reality, it's still a very low amount, but like he felt like he was a super smart guy, right? Felt like he was really pushing himself. Had to really dig deep for that energy and focus that he needed, but wouldn't have dug deep unless he had to. Like, you don't know what you can do unless you get to push yourself. So I think that practice, that opening of Pandora's box, the other way to look at it is the other way around. Right? If your scale of magnificence and capability in your life goes from 1 to 10, let's say even 1 to 5, and you're at a 4, you're going to feel pretty good on that. You're going to feel like I'm almost maxed out here. I'm 4 out of 5. Yeah, I got a bit to go, but like I don't want to push it. It's not worth it. I'm there. But if your scale goes from 1 to 100, like 4 is going to feel ridiculous. So if you've experienced something else, like you've already opened the gates, right? Part of having that emotional, energetic, or emotional flexibility is proving to yourself that there is another side of it. Part of what we do in our immersive events is prove to people that they can go longer than they expect. Part of what we do in our everyday business is push ourselves so we can prove it to ourselves what we can do, because it resets every single time. Every time you hit a new place, like, oh, is that it? It's like, oh no. Oh no, there's 90 foot more stuff to go. Like, I've got some space.
Yes, I think what's ringing through for me is just being able to, that it's a choice. I keep coming back to this. Okay, so maybe anybody watching this has had a rough day, a bad day, low energy day. And so maybe our ceiling isn't as high as our normal capacities if we're not taking care of our metabolic, emotional, energetic flexibility, but there's always more or another place that we can go to. So I think it's interesting because part of that is being aware, being conscious of the fact that we can tap into that, and we have that belief system that we can't do it, then we won't even try to do it. We're not even aware of it. And part of what we discussed or started to discuss off camera before we hit record was our process of falling asleep. I think this is so interesting because I want to relate the two of these things here, but so the funny thing that you mentioned earlier that you referenced was sleeping. I shared a tweet that I had come across. Sleeping is the one thing that we pretend to do before we actually do it. So you have to be in a relaxed state to fall asleep. What I'm fascinated by, and so there's probably the reverse of this example in our energy conversation, but like you're aware, and then all of a sudden you lose consciousness. Like you don't know that you're sleeping until, right, you wake up the next morning or in the middle of the night and you've got something else to compare it to. But I'm wondering if that opposite is true, is like when you have those low energy days, you're unconscious, and then you're like, you know what, I can go to another level here. I can tap into another space. I have a choice here, and I'm going to do that. So it almost works as the reverse. Would you agree with that? How do you see that?
Absolutely. It's always a cycle. It's always either spiraling up or spiraling down. It's like that's always the application of it. Whether which part of your life it's into, I don't think makes a difference in some senses. So it's just about, are you moving towards something, or are you creating, are you growing, or are you shrinking? It's like moving to backwards, or are you moving forward? Like no in between. Like there's no plateau. It can feel like there's a plateau, but just because you're moving backwards slowly.
Yeah, and so where does, like, you can't spiraling up? I mean, I would love to clarify that. That doesn't mean always go, right? There's got to be downtime. So how can somebody remain conscious that their downtime is still a version of spiraling up?
I think you got to create the parameters for yourself, right? Like I had this conversation today as well, right? It's one when I first started figuring out the principles of success and kind of going down the personal development road, I was really excited by that because I started to get some results, like things were changing. But I was also really scared by it because I was like, am I doing the right things? Is this going to run out? How do I know I'm still doing these things? Am I like lying to myself, or am I still pushing it? And I think that you're always going to contend with that with yourself because you can't see yourself, right? You can't. That's why it's so important to have someone else there reflecting it for you. And that's one of the big reasons why I became a coach, because I wanted to stay in that place all the time. And how best to do that other than work with people to do it for them, and you constantly like learn for yourself as well. Like you're doing the reps all the time. The client's doing the reps, but you're doing it with them, and you're constantly creating it and pushing the envelope. So you've got to create a version of what is winning today look like, and then we're back to habits and goal setting. You might have had a coach say to me the other day, he's like, I want to move fast on this. I want to, like, he's just getting going. I want to come in. I want to rock it with a bunch of clients. He said, but I've got other things to do right now. I'm balancing this. I can't go as fast as I want. It's not happening fast enough. Okay, well, what can you do right now? How much time have you got? What does success look like every day in the constraints that you've got? Look, if you had 10 hours a day and no family, you could work 50 hours a week, plus you could do extra 20 on the weekend if you need to. You're going to have an abundance of time. But you know what? Then you're going to have a whole different set of problems anyway. So this is just take the ones you've got and then go, okay, I've got 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week. I've got an hour and a half. What do I want to do in an hour and a half? Okay, so you're not going to move as fast as a person with 50 hours a week, but you want to say, what does success look like in an hour and a half? Set the standard, hit it. Set the standard, hit it. And you'll get results. And then you're better to create more space, and you'll get 2 hours or 3 hours, then you can hit more of that. You've got to know what winning looks like.
A great reminder that even rich people have problems, right? The wealthy have problems. Only dead people don't have problems. So I like what you said. Just accept the problems that we have. Like, this is where the learning experience is here for us, right in front of our face. And this is one of the major takeaways I've learned over these last couple of years as a coach. Create what winning looks like. That was never on my radar. Like, well, I can define it. I'm going to define it myself. I have control over this. Or better yet, I will define it in a manner with which I have control over it. So success is not a result that I technically don't have control over. I don't have control over who buys coaching from me, or who, how successful I am, or what this is or what that is. I have control over my actions. And this is where this whole conversation comes full circle, because I can tap into a place with stretching myself, because that's always what success is growing and pushing yourself to what's possible, because then you'll reap benefits that we can't even really wrap our arms around until you actually do it. But defining it, that's been so key for me. And I noticed that a lot with a lot of my coaching clients in the beginning of our relationship, is like, there's a lot of work to be done with defining what that is. People know what it is, but they like, not at first, like, right?
Yeah.
You get there eventually, but it's never there like, oh, well, this is what it is. Because I think they do it then if they knew it. So part of that is just defining what it is. And so, there's resistance to that, right? There's resistance with, like, I can define success. Like, what do you mean? So, I wonder where that comes from, but I'm just intrigued by that, to be able to, it's like a hack, right? It's a principle to success.
It's almost like there's a cloak of mystery or some sort of magic spell over that, because you can't see that you can't see it. I know what success is. Like, more revenue in my business, a better body, happier relationship. Oh, what are you talking about? Define it. I know what it is. Like,
Yeah.
Well, it seems like that's an obvious answer, right? It seems like that's a fair enough goal, but it's like, well, how do you know when you get there? Okay, well, if you want more success in my business, yeah, more revenue. Okay. At what point will you create a milestone to say this is the right amount of revenue, the right amount of more for that particular time frame?
Yeah, because that's the most sure way to know that you're progressing along this path. And then that's like, we just define it as success. Like, that's a label on it. But there's more, like, there's a reason that we want that. It gives us things that it's like it's the reassurance that we are growing. But to define it is it's something that it can be, unusual is not the word. It can be something that people have resistance to in the beginning. But I think the deeper you make that group, the more you practice it, you realize that that's how you go higher, is like just defining what it is. It's
That's
so
why
simple. So simple.
and that's why it's mind blowing in certain ways, because it's complex simplicity, right? Like it's so simple that people don't do it or think it's something to be contended with, because it's just like, it's simple. What are you talking about? Like
Yes, it should be harder. It almost feels like it should be harder.
right. And so people get frustrated. They go, why it's so simple? Why am I doing it? Then they look at themselves and go, well, they look outside them first of all. Like the weather's not good, the market's going down, pandemic, someone's not doing something, team's screwing up. And then eventually they look at themselves saying, it must be me. It must be me. I must not be good enough. I must not be worthy. It must not be worthy of love. And that's essentially where it goes if you ask enough deep questions. And it's all because they just didn't understand the parameters for winning. That's dangerous. It's downright scary.
100%. Yeah. And that leads you to a whole nother conversation. But yeah, that's where the truth comes out, right? Because then you realize that some of these barriers to defining the success is just like these self-limiting beliefs that are not true. These are like the cloaks. That's the cloak right there. And just a spell that you can get rid of, you can shed. But to your point, you got to become aware of it first. Awaken from that slumber.
Love, I will share with clients when I first started working with them that, we want to take 100% responsibility for our lives. Everything, like responsibility is just the ability to respond. It's not your fault. And even if it is your fault, the bad things, then it's your fault for the good things as well. So let's just throw that away and just take responsibility. And then part of that conversation is that no excuses, just stories. Well, and so the concept of stories is such an important one that I think it's understood, but again, because it's it's accepted, I should say, but because it's accepted, we don't tend to go deep enough into it. But it's so powerful. We're constantly in a story. I just had another coach share with me, said, what I found is that most people love getting value out of first call, initial connection. He said, but most people just want to get out of there after that, and they're not really interested in going forward.
It's an interesting story.
Like, does that story support you to be successful? It's like, well, it's real. Like, is it? Is it real? I based it off anecdotal information. Okay, well, base something else off of anecdotal information then. How about a story that says that, look, every time I connect with someone, like, they get a ton of value of it, and sometimes it's a good fit to move forward, and sometimes other people have got stuff going on and they're not ready yet. Just that's enough to keep you going to the next one. The other one, they can only go one direction, right? Like, what's the destination of that? What's the destiny of that story? I give up because every person I talk to is only in it for the first call.
Yeah, the rest of that book's already written.
It's already written.
Right.
Like, that's like, we love stories. We're in love with stories, right? Because all of the meanings that are happening around us, like, our brain's going, like, what is that? It's like, well, let's create a story. Fill in the gaps. If there are pieces missing in the story, our minds will fill it in. That's why that game of telephone, when you're talking to one side and like 5 people down the line, they got a completely different thing from the first person said, because they miss one word and my mind fills it in with something. Fills it in with something else, you get something completely different. We're constantly in our stories. You be careful. Does your story support you to a place you want to go, or is it sending you to a place that you just plain don't want to go? Like, it's the most important, could be the most important thing. And so let's tie it back to energy, right? If your energy or your state is not good, then your story is not going to be good because your energy is low. And then your strategy, your action is going to support an outcome that you don't want.
It's all congruency. So if one of those things is off, then we know we got to change them all, because the rest are going to follow.
Yeah.
Does your story support you? That's going to be my takeaway today. Whenever you found yourself low energy, or you're not converting, or you're having a lousy day, what's the story that you're telling yourself, and does your story support you?
Back to the awareness of, like, are you aware of the story you're telling yourself right now?
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. So bring us home. Takeaway for you, or something that's a good refresher from today.
Yeah. Where are you part of the failure you're seeing right now? That's not taken away. That was my next thought.
What part are you playing in the story, right?
Yeah.
What's your character? Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Coach, always a pleasure. Coach's Corner, Truth Seekers Special Edition. Have a great week.
Special edition. Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction. So please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links. Links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset. Come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.